Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast. We're glad you're here. And now our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. Mike here with another episode of the Mission First People Always podcast. And I'm excited you're with us because in this episode, we explore all things culture with a culture expert, Andrea Wanerstrand. I'm excited about this conversation because culture is such an important driver of organizational success. And of course, we recall Peter Drucker's famous line, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that means that no matter how well designed a company strategy is, if the company culture doesn't support its implementation, the strategy will ultimately fail. And if this is true, it behooves us to invest time, energy, resources, and lots of brain power to create the kind of culture that benefits people and performance. And that's exactly, at least in terms of the conversational part of this and the brain power part of this, that's what I want to do in this episode. So I'm excited about this conversation and this guest. So let me tell you about her. Andrea Wanerstrand is the founder and CEO of A3 CultureLab. And she's going to tell us what A3 stands for. It's very cool. As a leadership speaker and coach, she collaborates with organizations from startups to multinational corporations to accelerate their journey toward creating extraordinary human-centric cultures. We're also going to talk about what it means to have a human-centric culture. Her mission is to revolutionize work environments by fostering authentic, autonomous, and accountable organizations for sustainable success. I think that's a tip-off on the A3 component of her company. She empowers leaders and their teams to build empathy-driven environments, making their leadership presence and business cultures more humane while achieving remarkable business and personal results. She's got over 20 years of experience in international business management, consulting, and executive coaching. She's worked for some very large, successful household names or organizations like a little company in the Pacific Northwest called Microsoft and T-Mobile. She's led global performance management, and her resume is quite long. And you're going to want to connect with her or check her out on LinkedIn, follow her on LinkedIn so you can see that entire resume. I will run out of breath if I try to read this whole resume here. She's got something really cool coming up in the early part of 2025. It's called Mindset Maven. We're going to talk about what that's all about. It's a cool group coaching cohort, and I'm very excited to hear more about it. So, Andrea Wanerstrand of A3 CultureLab, welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here too, Dr. Mike. Thank you for having me.
Well, it is a Monday when we're recording this. And so we've got an entire week ahead of us. A lot of my listeners are organizational leaders, they're managers, they lead teams, and they're concerned about creating the kind of culture that will retain, attract, help people thrive. So let's start very foundationally. How do you define culture?
See, for me, culture at its essence is based in the how work gets done, how leaders make others feel, how small mistakes are addressed, and how much trust is truly there. And the common issue is fears that need to be addressed in building and maintaining trust. So, for me, it's that relationship level and the interactions amongst the team that create the culture.
So you and I just had a brief conversation before we jumped on live here. We didn't get a chance to talk at length, but I think we discovered pretty quickly that we are aligned on a lot of our sort of key principles. Leadership is a relationship. The primary responsibility, and I'm speaking for myself here, the primary responsibility of leaders is to bring out the best in the people around them in order to accomplish the mission that we're called to achieve. So with this common ground, you open up the door to a lot of things we could talk about. Why do so many people struggle with cultures that aren't healthy? Is a bad culture, a bad relationship within that culture, a primary reason that people want to get out of organizations? Why is culture so hard to do, I guess, is what I'm asking.
That's good. There's a million different ways we can go with
Well,
that,
we've got about
but
30
if
minutes here. Go take a couple hundred
so
thousand and go with it.
there, here's the thing: how you show up as a leader every day, a manager. When I say leader, I'm not talking organizational structure. We can all be leaders, even as individual contributors, but how we show up every day with consistency and manage our, everyone talks about emotional intelligence. I talk a lot about emotional awareness and how we show up authentically rather than showing up as a role. So the culture aspect, we have high expectations, there's stress to perform. There's a reason the business exists, because there needs to be an output of something, and hopefully folks are making money along the way. And so you have a pressure system to begin with. Then you add in unmet or unexplained expectations and communications issues. And if you are a leader of that team that's trying to create the outcome of the business for whatever the business was established for, how you show up and your consistent nature in how you show up sets the tone and the vibe, if you will, even for the team.
So let's break it down then. That's a great starting point. How should a leader show up to create that tone that creates a culture that works and is healthy? What advice do you have for leaders? Let's say, in fact, let's do a little, not role play, but create a little scenario here at least. I just got promoted. I've been an individual contributor, top of my game, subject matter expert, technical expert. I've made some great contributions, and leadership has recognized my contributions and my technical expertise, my prowess. And they've said, we want you to lead a team. And I come to Andrea for advice. What do you tell me?
The first thing I ask you is, it's great that you've got all this technical knowledge. You're going to bring a lot to the team and they're going to be able to learn a lot from you. But how are you going to get work done through others, seeing as you've normally done the work yourself? And and when I ask him that, I was like, how are you going to enable your team? Well, I'm going to empower them. I'm going to make them autonomous. So you're going to completely trust them to get things done, even if it's not the exact way you do it, right? So when we have people that come in with great expertise and they're used to getting great results, getting them to lead others and know that the results are and how it's done exactly, unless they become a micromanager, which we know that can become an issue, is them letting go of some of that expertise, imparting it to their team, but also letting their team learn. And this is the shift when you go from an individual contributor into a management position that all of us struggle with in some capacity until we learn to how to get work done through others as a manager of others.
Now, you use the term autonomous team, and I think that's one of the A's in A3. And so I work in several settings in a manufacturing environment, plant environment, where they're moving toward autonomous teams. And I don't know that everyone in the audience really understands what that term means. So what is an autonomous team, and how do we create one, and why would we want one?
So autonomy, first and foremost, why you might want autonomy is that you can achieve results and have greater agility faster. And in today's marketplace, with the advances of all kinds of technology, no matter whether you're in a technology company or not, our speed of change is getting faster and faster. The autonomy is in a workplace refers to the ability of individuals and teams to make independent decisions and take actions without constant supervision. And not to say there isn't roles out there that do need constant supervision, especially those really early in career, or there needs to be oversight in a production line of some sort. But the autonomous employees are empowered to manage their tasks, their projects, their workflows, and it increases motivation for them and productivity. Going hand in hand with that, though, is they have to be held accountable. And so setting expectations before autonomy can even happen is what's the output? Where are we going to? What's the North Star we're all working towards? What are our rules of engagement? How we set the foundation of how we work together? How do we manage mistakes that happen, right? And how do we ensure that there's transparency? So that goes into that accountability. A lot of us have not been taught how to be autonomous at work. In fact, command and control was a form of leadership that was seen to be a best practice for many, many years. That's changing, right? So we want to have things be agile and move forward. So creating autonomy and teaching people to be autonomous through holding them accountable and taking responsibility for their own actions and decisions, knowing that they're encouraged to learn along the way, is the goal here as far as becoming autonomous.
Accountability sounds scary to people. Is there a way to understand accountability that's positive and productive and not scary? And the reason I think maybe some people view it as scary is because someone along the way has wagged their finger at them and said, I'm holding you accountable for this. And there were consequences and bad stuff happened and it was no fun for them. So why is accountability something I should crave if I'm a member of one of these teams? If I've got my stuff together, why should accountability be a good thing for me?
You're right. We do focus on the negative connotations of certain words, or when you say the word performance review, folks naturally tense up. But accountability just simply means taking responsibility for one's actions and decisions and the outcomes. Well, if you mess up, that's not feeling so great. But we more often get things right. So accountability means getting the credit, right? It means being able to, move things forward towards the goal line on behalf of your role in the team. So, how we balance out accountability is with positive feedback in the moment to reinforce great behavior. It's also course corrective in a way that's constructive and is based in learning. You'll hear me talk about don't be nice, be kind, because nice doesn't go below the surface often. But someone who's kind is going to step into the courageous conversation. So that accountability model doesn't have to feel that negative, because that's generally when we think of using it. It's also holding people accountable for the great work they've been doing, and how do you get that consistently from them? So we need to emphasize that it's about getting credit as well as, okay, accountability when things get a little sideways.
So if this is done in the context of the autonomous team, it's not just the manager that is responsible for holding people accountable. It would seem that there's a high degree of self-accountability, which would mean transparency and put myself out there and sharing what's working and what's not working. And then my peers have to step up as well. Is that what it means to have an autonomous teams, that peers are holding each other accountable and not waiting for the manager to drop in and drop the hammer or say something nice to me to make me feel good?
Absolutely. Especially in large companies, you're operating in a matrix. Your manager is one of the components. And yes, they do have a say in your performance, but those that you work with, and whether they be a, direct peer, another group in the organization, holding each other accountable, giving candid feedback in a way that's constructive and relationship built, that act of kindness, if you will, in showing up for people in a consistent manner that's all about growth in the end goal. It's not anything that's laid personally out there in the feedback. That's what an autonomous team really is about. And an autonomous team can achieve great productivity and can innovate because they don't have the stress of waiting for a hammer to fall, if you will, because everyone is transparent about how things are going and they're doing it in a way of support with each other rather than in a competition.
And I think an operative word that I heard in your response was growth. And many of us are familiar with the work of Professor Carol Dweck and her great book, Mindset, and the importance of having a growth mindset. Can one create an effective autonomous team, or can one be a member of an autonomous team, a productive member of an autonomous team, without a growth mindset? Just how important is that growth mindset for autonomous teaming?
Oh, I had the honor of meeting Carol when I was working at Microsoft. Growth mindset, I've mentioned a few times how small mistakes are handled, right? So is this a learning opportunity or is this, just a mistake and we got to try again? And it is critical path for any team to understand that things aren't going to go 100% perfect. Probably rarely will it go 100% perfect. And what do you do with that 99% of the time where things go a little different than planned? And that growth mindset is looking for the opportunity and it's observing for patterns. It's not one offs. And it allows you to have a lighter load. The stress of something going a little off plan is lower when the team has a growth mindset. They're going
Mm.
to see some value in it. And we could list all the different inventions that are out there that were because something messed up and they ended up finding out something else instead. And so the growth mindset is critical.
Let's switch gears a little bit, Andrea. One of the other A's in your name is related to authenticity. So, what keeps us from being authentic at work? Is it the imposter syndrome? Is it a fear, and that being a fear that people are going to discover that we're really not what we, you know, present ourselves to be? We're kind of faking it until we make it. Is it we're trying to present ourselves in a way that we think others want to see, and it's, we're wearing a mask? What keeps us from being authentic at work, and why is it important to overcome those barriers?
Well, it's not sustainable to be inauthentic, first
Yeah.
and foremost, and it is hard work. It actually creates stress into the system. That whole fake it till you make it really just doesn't work, right? You can dress the part, but again, you're dressing a part. So the authenticity is important in the aspect that we are humans. And a lot of my clients go, well, I'm sorry, that's about my personal life and that's about my
Mm.
personal side. Well, your brain doesn't know any different. I do a lot with neuroscience, and your brain doesn't know the personal you and the work you. It just knows you. And those stresses that you're having that might have nothing to do with work are carried with you throughout the day. So, how are you managing yourself and your presence? And what emotional awareness do you have of things that are brewing under the surface that may or may not have anything to do with work? So if you can come up with a way that you can be authentic at work, and I'm a big Brene Brown fan, I'm not like oversharing for everything. You can have boundaries about what you're discussing with your colleagues, with your employees. But if you can show up in a genuine way that is consistent, you can be your authentic self and you can be vulnerable. Someone who is invulnerable is not seen as human. Right. And then when they do fall, it's a bigger fall for them because we will all fall, we'll all mess up. And it's the leader that can be genuine and own it when they make a bad call, the one that's still going to have the team rallying around them versus someone who has been acting on the stage, thinking they all got it right. And when something goes sideways, they're blaming somebody else or blaming the system. They're not owning it. So you're just creating more work for yourself and taking on a persona. You're creating more stress in the system. You're creating an environment where people aren't going to trust it because you can't be consistent in a sustainable fashion when you're faking it to make it.
So, authenticity is being real. It's not creating this false dichotomy between me at home and me at work. It's just me. And me has emotions. I have emotions, to use a little better English. I have emotions. And sometimes my emotion or my desire is to really express a sense of empathy toward a colleague who's going through a difficult season, either at work or at home. But yet, I'm responsible as the manager to get the job done. I have a mission to accomplish, and we've got an outcome we've got to achieve. And if this person's performance has diminished in some way and they haven't, and I've got to hold them accountable, they're not contributing in the way that we all expect, but yet they're going through a tough time at home. I've got to somehow balance my desire to be a human and care for their humanness and their struggles, but yet I got to hold them accountable and I got to get this result and I got to be this authoritarian figure. How do you balance that as a leader?
That's a great question. Empathy is important. And hopefully, I know that a lot of the large companies that you and I have done work in have wonderful human resources and wellness programs in place to help support. So, first and foremost, I would encourage a manager to look for the resources that you have in your company to help you support your employee. Second of all, it's having some honest, transparent conversations about the work that needs to get done, what's expected during that performance. And at least here in the United States, I can't speak for all other countries. There are things that are a leave of absence. So make sure you're using all the resources that are out there when you have an employee that is going through a personal situation that is first and foremost happening to them. And then second of all, might be impacting their work. Should they even be at work right now? Would be my first question. The next thing I would say is, yes, you have to be empathetic, yet you also have the entire team and their entire team's morale. So if there's one person that is holding the team back, how do you have those conversations regarding the performance and bring in your partners from within the company, whether that's HR, et cetera, to have the harder conversations if it gets that far? Generally, somebody just wants to know, look, over the next 60 days, I know you've got a lot of things that you're going through. Maybe it's been a death in the family and you're wrapping things up. Let's make sure you take a leave of absence. Let's make sure we get things in place for you. When you come back, we're going to need you to ramp up and cover X, Y, and Z. So having a plan with them with some time bound, if it's possible, about, okay, it's understanding your performance might dip in the next 30, 60, 90 days, whatever that might be. And here's how we're going to bring it back. I don't like the word performance improvement plan, the PIP, because generally when they're used today, that means you've already made the decision. You're just documenting to put them out the door. So I'm not talking about a PIP.
Dead man walking.
Yeah, you're dead man walking for sure, right? It's just that they need the paper trail for the employment laws of X country to be able to do that. I'm talking about in this instance, Mike, is this ability to have a candid conversation with your employee with empathy, but also setting a plan in place as to how they stay on track, you stay on track with them, and then the team stays on track.
So everything we've been talking about so far in this conversation really seems to be, if we were to find a summary or an umbrella term to place this under, it would seem to be something like human-centric, a workplace that considers the needs of the humans involved, yet is this dynamic, energetic learning environment where we can all be set up to thrive. So first of all, would you agree with that banner term human-centric? And if you do, tell us what it means to you.
Yeah, human centricity is becoming more and more of a conversation, especially in the world of AI these days.
Mm-hmm.
It's that we are emotional beings. We are a culmination of our experiences. And you talked about that person who's been promoted because they're so great at their technical skills, and now they're going to have to learn something new. So if we can understand the emotional roller coaster, even when something as great as getting a promotion's happening, emotions are running high in there. You could have imposter syndrome. Like, are they going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing? And this is where we want to remind them that you're coming to this with a unique perspective. You were chosen for this knowing you hadn't been in management before. So how do we help people manage their situations in a work environment so that we all achieve the outcomes of the business, our professional, personal goals? And the way we can do that is just by understanding how we all feel, getting people aligned, trying to make people feel better rather than worse, but being honest. And that's where I said being kind, right? Kindness is more human-centric than just everybody getting along. Maybe there does need to be a tough conversation on occasion. So I have teams that'll say to me, yeah, we all get along really great. And I'm like, okay, now let's dig in. And you find a mess of a world of miscommunication.
Mm.
So human-centric to me is based on how we make each other feel, how we, including our customers, and what do we want to be known for? Because the thing that folks are going to remember about you is not your titles, not your resume, going to be how you made them feel when they interacted with you. And that's the human centricity part.
Maya Angelou at her best. So, Andrea, I know you've got something new that's right around the corner. It's called Mindset Maven. And I know you're excited about it. I'm excited about it. I want to give you a chance to tell the audience what it is and why they might want to be excited about Mindset Maven. What is it? What can it do for them? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. As you know, I've worked in organizations for the last 25 years, and generally a lot of my work with A3 has been for organizations. So I wanted to create something for individuals that really want to up level their mindset and their skill set. That focuses on a mind-body connection. We get a little deeper into our emotions and how we can regulate them and manage them so that we can show up with consistency. And I use the example of our multiplicity. Part of me wants to do this, part of me wants to do that, right? Some of this conflict that goes on within us in building our own resilience and our own confidence. Mindset Maven is taking all of the years that I've worked in the corporate environments and looking at how individuals can create their own plan in conjunction with the others that are going through it. So it's a group cohort and be able to really up-level themselves. It's ideal for folks that are getting to that next level. Maybe you're going from a manager to a director. Maybe you're an entrepreneur and you're, expanding your business and you really haven't hired teams before, let alone managed teams before, and you want to up-level your leadership skills and increase your own self-awareness so that you can be consistent and effective. That's what Mindset Maven is being designed for.
And it's a group coaching cohort, if I understood you correctly.
Yes, it's a group coaching cohort. We are looking at small cohorts, no more than 10 in the cohort, so that you can build in a relationship with those and network as well. And we go through a series of setting your goals and, some very common basics that a lot of cohort programs use. But where we're really going to go deep is in the neuroscience and helping you bring that personal self and work self into a way for you to show authenticity, be genuine, but yet still not share everything, as Brene Brown states. So it has the group coaching, some one-to-one with me, as well as some modules based on the learnings that I've had from the great companies that I've been able to work at over the years.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I would encourage my audience to connect with you. We've got some links in the show notes. LinkedIn might be the best way to connect with Andrea. Before we leave this episode, Andrea, perhaps you know that one of the traditions on the Mission First People Always podcast is to invite each guest to offer a piece of advice that's perhaps simple, memorable, and very practical that our listeners might be able to put into practice right away to make them just a little better leader, or to make their team just a little better, or in the context of our conversation today, to make their culture a little better. So what advice might you have for our listeners?
The thing that I would share with them is I've mentioned several times in our discussion, you being able to be consistent and consistently show up for your team. And this comes down to really understanding when's your best energy for interactions. When are you feeling the most energized where you can show up and share with people? So I have a lot of my coaching clients when I first start working with them do for the next 2 weeks an energy audit. And it's as simple as this. I want you to mark throughout the day how high your energy is at certain activities that are part of it. It might be just like your energy level. Are you feeling sluggish when you first get up? Go to a few meetings, simply mark in your calendar, I felt energized for that. I felt drained from that. And watch the patterns evolve over the next 2 weeks. What that's going to tell you is some patterns of when you're at your best and when you're not at your best. And I encourage managers, especially those that have to have a courageous conversation, to know their own energy levels and plan those conversations when they're at their best. So an energy audit of how you're feeling, and it could be down to even those that you're interacting with. Does your energy go down? Are you draining your energy in certain conversations? Does your energy go up? Because our interactions with each other fuel our exhaustion, or they actually fuel our energy and propel us forward. They can go either way. So that would be what I would have them do, just to get another level of self-awareness going so they can build it into their consistency.
Great advice. Andrea, thanks for being a great guest on the Mission First People Always podcast. Again, I would encourage my audience to connect with Andrea on LinkedIn, check out her website, see what she's up to, consider being a mindset maven with her. And to my listeners, we're all about here on the Mission First People Always podcast, trying to discover how we can bring our best selves to work each day so we can bring out the best in others. So I hope this conversation has helped you do that in some small way. And we invite you to keep working on being a great leader, a great team member, a great builder of teams, and to join us again on the next episode of the Mission First People Always podcast. Until next time, God bless and have a great week.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to create a stronger, more people-centric and empowered culture for your organization, visit drmikepatterson.com.